We begin this morning with a troubling rise in new COVID cases, an increase that's overwhelming hospitals in several states that are already calling on the National Guard for help.
Yeah, the Delta variant is continuing to sweep through the country, with 6 states accounting for over half of new COVID hospitalizations. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has hit a wall in its efforts to get more people vaccinated. That's because the Senate delivered a bipartisan vote against vaccine mandates for private employees. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello has the latest from Washington, D.C.
Hey, Joe and Savannah, good morning to you. You know, we have been hearing from doctors and nurses on the front lines nationwide who say they are getting an earful right now of disbelief and anger. Disbelief that they are ending up in the ER and ICU with COVID, even though they're not vaccinated. Anger directed at the very people trying to help them. While Omicron is spreading around the country, those are very mild cases. It is the Delta variant that is really causing major problems nationwide. More than 1,000 deaths every day. On Capitol Hill overnight, a symbolic blow to President Biden's vaccine mandate for private companies. The requirements for companies with 100-plus employees already facing opposition on the courts, now rejected by the Senate, though the vote not expected to go to the House. It comes as frustration is rising at hospitals across the country as COVID infections and deaths are yet again surging.
Another day, another shift with no beds.
1,100 people dying every day, the vast majority unvaccinated despite ample vaccine supply. Frontline doctors and nurses exhausted and even walking away from the job.
Us nurses, other coworkers, respiratory therapists, all the medical team, we are tired.
It's so frustrating when you have this continuing to occur when it's really self-inflicted.
Just 6 states now make up half the country's hospitalizations: Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, New York, Illinois, and Michigan.
Our whole teams, we're exhausted.
ER Dr. Geneva Tatum at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit.
I have the privilege of training younger doctors in the field as well, and see their struggle, especially when they see people of their younger age group come in so critically ill. And so it takes quite a bit of an emotional toll on all of us.
Meanwhile, President Biden celebrating news that Pfizer's booster shot provides robust protection against the new Omicron variant.
If you get the booster, you're really in good shape.
Pfizer says its first 2 vaccine doses do not hold up well against Omicron, but the third shot, the booster, provides 25 times the protection against Omicron.
It just came out.
On Wednesday, Pfizer's CEO talked to Savannah.
3 doses against Omicron are almost equivalent to the 2 doses effectiveness we had against the wild type, the original variant.
It's the booster shot that may provide the most robust protection against COVID's current mutations. So will the definition of fully vaccinated change to 3 shots or more?
That's certainly being discussed.
Meanwhile, new research out of Israel this morning and published in the New England Journal of Medicine finds that boosters in Israel dramatically cut the infection rate. In fact, increased protection tenfold. Again, that's the Pfizer booster, and it dropped the mortality rate by 90%. So a real significant finding, further evidence of the role that boosters play in protecting you not only against Omicron, but also against the Delta variant. And oh, by the way, we asked Dr. Fauci, do you believe that the Moderna booster will have the same effect as the Pfizer booster in giving you the protection against Omicron? And he said that's their belief at this point. All the evidence points towards that. Joe and Savannah, back to you guys.
All right, Tom Costello, thank you so much.
Let's bring in Dr. Clyde Yancey, Chief of Cardiology at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Dr. Yancey, good morning. So Pfizer says the Omicron variant may require a 4th vaccine 12 months after the booster to ensure full immunity against the variant. Other companies say new vaccines may need to be administered altogether. Help us understand all this, and what is really the future of the COVID vaccine, do you think?
Well, good morning, Joe. And certainly this is a very, very important issue for us to consider. Remember that one of the advantages of this vaccine is that we can iterate the vaccine, meaning we can change the vaccine as necessary. The evidence is already telling us we likely do need the 3rd dose. The booster dose is really important to protect against Omicron, and it's possible that there will be a 4th down the road. We also have to understand that science gave us this vaccine, and science can help us create a better vaccine if necessary. But Joe, there's one prevailing message. We've been at this for 2 years, over 700,000 deaths. What comes through time and time again, getting the vaccine works. We know that as of this morning, 200 million people in this country are fully vaccinated. That's good news. But we know as of this morning, 30% still are not vaccinated. As long as this virus can find a host, it can continue to mutate. And as it mutates, new variants will emerge. We may not have seen the last variant, and the protection is couched in the vaccines.
Dr. Yancey, I want to ask you about another development. The FDA has now authorized the first injectable monoclonal antibody cocktail for long-term prevention of COVID-19. It's from AstraZeneca. So who's eligible to receive this treatment, and how does this help in our overall fight against COVID?
So, Joe, think about this. When this whole process started, we had no tools. We just had public health strategies and hard work by a lot of healthcare workers and public health advocates and community volunteers. Now we have vaccines, but the portfolio is expanding. Just yesterday, we have an approved monoclonal antibody for those that are immunocompromised that either did not generate an antibody response to the vaccine, we can measure that, or are so averse to the vaccine biologically that they can't tolerate it. Those people have been in a terribly lonely place because of their immunocompromised circumstance. So now there's an agent that they can be given that actually preempts the infection. And the data look very promising that about once every 6 months, giving this injectable monoclonal antibody protects them substantially from developing COVID. As we fill out this portfolio, this suite of therapies, we may find that we're eventually able to live with. We may not be able to get rid of COVID-19. That's a difficult thing to say. But we may be able to live with it better as we get more therapies online.
That'll be the key. Finally, I want to ask you, a new report from the Global Health Security Index shows not a single country, not one in the world, is prepared for another global pandemic. So what are some of the biggest reasons for this? What do we need to be learning from the pandemic we're in right now?
You know, Joe, what we learned the first time through was that we really did not have an adequately resourced and an appropriately ready public health response for an outsized stress, which was the pandemic. We've exhausted so many of our resources. We've been in this almost 2 years, Joe, that we haven't had a chance to re-equip our public health resources, and we started from a less than ideal circumstance. As we're thinking about becoming more adept, more facile, more capable of dealing with this in the future, we must pay attention to building up our public health resource. It's pretty evident that we will face challenges like this again, so we need to be better prepared. And we know what we need to do, which is the good news. We just have to have the will to move forward and make it happen.
Dr. Clyde Yancey, always happy to talk with someone wearing my beloved Northwestern purple. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
That's a good way. Thanks so much, man.
Now this morning, a warning from President Biden to Russia of, quote, severe consequences if Russia invades Ukraine. Speaking a day after that virtual meeting with President Putin, Biden ruled out American troops on the ground, saying it was not on the table. It comes as Russian forces continue to amass along the border with Ukraine. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is in Ukraine with the latest.
Joe, Savannah, we are in eastern Ukraine, not far from the Russian border. This is a closed military zone controlled by the Ukrainian military. No civilians live here. And you can see there's been extensive damage from years of fighting already. And this is where the whole world is watching right now to see if Russian troops will launch an invasion.
The front lines along Ukraine's border with Russia harken back to World War II, or even earlier. Miles of narrow paths flanked by landmines and trenches. Muddy today, often frozen solid.
So we better just
These positions are designed to stop or at least slow down a Russian advance. And they're on high alert now. Russian troops, around 100,000, and tanks and artillery are massed along 3 sides of the Ukrainian border. And in addition to the regular Russian army, there are pro-Russian militias already operating inside Ukraine.
This is the most dangerous flashpoint. Ukrainian troops occupy these trenches 24/7, and pro-Russian forces are just about 50 yards away. And according to the Ukrainian soldiers here, those Russian-backed troops fire on them almost every day. And it wouldn't take much for an escalation here to trigger a much wider war.
We have trench with guys, they have trench with guys. Below this locate minefields. So basically when some side start that attacking, it's have casualties, no matter what they do.
30-year-old Lieutenant Ivan Skorotovsky has been serving on the front for 8 years.
Putin, I think, not stop in the Ukraine.
Do you think Russia's going to do it?
In our language, we have some words like hope for the best and get ready for the worst.
So this is one of the forward lookout positions.
Nearby, Squad Commander Alexander Timoshuk showed me where the enemy is. Those pro-Russian militias on Ukrainian territory, backed and armed by Moscow.
But it's not very far away.
An all-out ground war could also expand beyond Ukraine. The U.S. State Department warns neighboring Belarus, Putin's closest and increasingly dependent ally, could also be drawn in.
President Biden has effectively ruled out sending combat troops to Ukraine, so it is highly likely that you would see American soldiers in positions like this going toe-to-toe against Russian forces. But the U.S. and other countries already do send military advisors that offer specialized training, and the Ukrainian government wants more of those advisors and more weapons. Joe, Savannah?
Richard Engel, fascinating look. Stay safe. Thank you so much.
U.S. State Department has issued a new travel advisory for Mexico, citing rising COVID cases in the country and a recent surge in violence there. The warning comes just days after Mexican authorities said a group of armed men on jet skis started firing guns near a Cancun beach resort full of tourists. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has more on that story for us. Sam, good morning.
Joe, good morning. So many families, of course, look forward to these holiday trips. Travel to Mexico at the moment is surging for a variety of reasons. And for millions of people, Joe, there's probably minimal impact here. But for families like the Joneses from Utah, the nightmare of running around for their lives is going to stick for some time.
In Mexico, along with sunbathers and white sand beaches, a new image emerging: armed troops protecting one of the country's most important resources, tourists. Mexico beefing up its security following a string of violent attacks, the latest just 2 days ago, sending terrified vacationers, including Americans, fleeing for cover.
Everybody started scrambling and screaming and crying.
Witnesses say armed attackers appeared on jet skis in the middle of Cancun's hotel zone and, according to local authorities, opened fire near several popular resorts. Zane Jones was resting in his hotel room when the shots rang out. His wife and 2 kids were at the pool.
Instantly, the adrenaline hit me, and it was just like, figure out where they are, make sure they're safe.
You're thinking about cutting your trip short at this point because of what happened?
Absolutely.
The Mexican government recently ramping up reinforcements in the popular tourist haven of Quintana Roo, which includes Cancun and Tulum, deploying more than 1,400 National Guardsmen on December 1st. But it wasn't enough to stop the terrifying incident on this beach. And now some Americans thinking about traveling to Mexico may be reconsidering after a series of violent incidents there recently. Last month, frightened tourists and staff sheltered in a Cancun hotel after police say suspected drug dealers opened fire on the beach. And in October, 2 tourists were killed in nearby Tulum during a reported shootout between gangs. An updated State Department travel advisory put in place yesterday urges increased caution due to crime in Mexico's Quintana Roo state.
When someone comes to you and says, I'm worried about my safety after something like this, what do you advise them?
The government has already taken drastic measures by putting armed guards in military fatigues on the beach, is something that perhaps should instill some confidence to a certain degree.
A literal army now guarding one of Mexico's top tourist attractions.
Joe, some other tips here to really go over for travelers. One of them, seek out name brand hotels. We mentioned that the hotel zone in Cancun is miles long, but those hotels are more likely to have comprehensive security plans in place and the resources to help you. You don't have to stay right in Cancun. There are so many cities that are 20 or 30 miles away, like Mayacoba, for example, that are still accessible to those beaches. And lastly, the State Department has an enrollment program that is free for travelers. It offers emergency services if you need them. So this can be done safely. But of course, be cautious, especially with everything that's happened the last couple of months. Joe?
All right, Sam Brock. Thanks, Sam.
Now to the Capitol, where Bob Dole, a giant of the Senate and three-time presidential candidate, will lie in state today before tomorrow's funeral service at the Washington National Cathedral. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell joins us now. Hi, Leanne. Good morning. So this is something of a homecoming for Senator Dole, who spent so many years on Capitol Hill. What do we know about the service that will be held today in the Capitol Rotunda?
Good morning, Savannah. It is a homecoming. The senator spent 35 years in that building behind me, mostly as a senator, 11 years as Republican leader, both majority and minority leader. And so his casket and his family will arrive at 9:45 a.m. this morning. The ceremony in the rotunda behind me is going to start around 10 a.m. And at that ceremony, speaking will be President Biden, who served with the senator for 24 years in the Senate. Also attending is the Pentagon Secretary and Austin, who represents Dole's World War II service. The military was extremely important to him. He was injured badly in World War II, spent 3 years in the hospital, and the military has always been very close to him. And so it's only going to be about a 45-minute ceremony today where people will pay their respects, and then he will stay for the rest of the day into the night for members of Congress, staff, and friends and family to come visit him. Savannah.
And then, Leanne, the celebration of his life, I know, continues tomorrow. Let's look ahead. There will be a service at the National Cathedral and another at the World War II monument that he actually had such an important role in creating. Tell us what we can expect to see.
Yeah, that's right. His funeral service will be tomorrow at the National Cathedral. That is the place in the nation's capital where so many dignitaries have their funerals, former presidents, former majority leaders like Senator Dole as well. The president will speak again tomorrow as well. And then finally, he will go to the World War II Memorial, something that he was instrumental in commissioning and helped to build, something that when he was in town, he would stop by and just talk to people who were coming to visit it. So those are going to be two also very important days and visits on his homecoming tour, Savannah.
And Leanne, I mean, to be honored in the Capitol Rotunda or the National Cathedral like he will be tomorrow is quite symbolic. Talk about the significance of those places and also what it says about the legacy of Bob Dole as this unique figure in American history.
Yeah, not many people are honored in the rotunda behind me to lay in state. Just 13 senators before him. And so it is a significant honor that not many people have. It goes to show how beloved he was. He was, of course, a partisan. He was a Republican, but he also reached across the aisle on many things. He was liked by both members of both parties. He was instrumental in the current day food stamp program. He expanded Social Security. He was instrumental in the Americans with Disabilities Act, something that he fought for throughout his career. And so this is the both parties coming together to really reminisce and talk about a time where bipartisanship was much more common. Savannah.
All right, Leanne Caldwell, thank you so much.
On Capitol Hill, Instagram CEO Adam Mosseri testified for the first time under oath. He faced tough questions about the app's safety, especially for its youngest users. Well, the social media platform did unveil new safety features just ahead of Mosseri's appearance. Senators on both sides of the aisle say that is not enough. NBC News senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson has the latest.
Hey there, Savannah and Joe. Good morning to you. So the Instagram CEO defended the app, pointing to what they're doing to make it safer for teens. But that wasn't good enough for many of the lawmakers he faced, who say they just can't trust the company to make the changes they want to see.
A contentious debut for the head of Instagram, with a bipartisan browbeating in his first time testifying on Capitol Hill.
Self-policing based on trust is no longer a viable solution.
We are asking you, have some empathy and take some responsibility.
Our kids aren't cash cows.
Both Republicans and Democrats demanding to know more about how the company plans to protect its youngest users after internal research shared by a whistleblower showed Instagram execs knew the platform could be harmful to some teen users, especially girls.
You're the new tobacco, whether you like it or not.
Instagram CEO Adam Mosseri on defense.
We all want teens to be safe online.
Pointing to new safety tools the company just rolled out, like a take a break feature to stop endless scrolling, nudges to keep teens from dwelling on one topic for too long, and soon parental controls to let adults set time limits for teens.
There's no area more important than youth safety.
Some lawmakers dismissing the moves as too little, too late, insisting Congress needs to pass tough new regulations with new pressure after those leaked documents suggested Instagram led 1 out of 3 teen girl users to feel worse about their body image. Gabriela Bermudez, now 19, knows what that's like. She says she started struggling with body image issues when she was just 12 after comparing herself to models and celebrities on Instagram.
I would just cover my face whenever I took a picture and just try to pose my body in a certain way.
Instagram and parent company Facebook, now known as Meta, dispute the characterizations of some of the leaked research. And while Mosseri told Craig in September they're putting plans for Instagram Kids on hold,
But we want to take the time to talk to parents and researchers and safety experts and get to more consensus about how to move forward.
he testified they're not spiking the idea altogether.
I believe as a parent, it's going to be more responsible to develop an age-appropriate version of Instagram for those under 13.
Mosseri suggested the creation of an industry panel to help create best practices for companies, and also said Instagram next year will let users see a chronological feed, so that's based on timeline, instead of one that's based on algorithms around what you engage with. Savannah, Joe, back to you.
Thank you, Hallie.
Let's now get a check on your morning news now weather.
Bill Cairns is back with us. Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning. So let's talk climate crisis, climate emergency, climate change. Let's first go and review what happened and then what's going to happen in this next week. So we got all our numbers in. You have to remember on the weather calendar, fall is September, October, November, and then winter starts December. It's just easier for record keeping. So this ended up being a top 10 warm November for the country. But a lot of that was because the West was so extraordinarily warm and above average. It was actually a little bit below average, and I mean, everywhere pretty much east of the Mississippi. But it was the 7th warmest, and it was the 8th driest also on record. And as far as the extremes went, this was the 2nd warmest November ever recorded. California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. And of course, those are the areas that are hit by the prolonged decade-long drought. And as far as the autumn goes, that's the 3-month period, September, October, November, temperatures were well warmer than normal. This was the 3rd warmest fall that we've ever had on record. And the top 3 warmest falls have all been since 2015. Yes, we are causing climate change and what we're now calling our climate emergency. So remember, climate is over a long period of time. When we talk weather, that's like the forecast just for today. And the map today is pretty quiet, a little bit of snow in areas of the West. As we go throughout this week, though, we're going to watch this warmth expanding. It's not normal to still be in the 70s in Oklahoma this time of year. And even by the time we get into the weekend, we're going to see the 50s and 60s all the way through the Ohio Valley. The warm Pacific air is going to move Saturday all the way up through New England. Syracuse, New York could be mid-60s on Saturday. Typically, they have like a foot or two of snow on the ground this time of year. Not this year. Whatever's on the ground now will be melting. And then as the time we get to Sunday, we kind of go back to a normal weather pattern, but it's still pretty mild in the middle of the country. Still 50s in Kansas City, 60s in Kansas, southern Kansas. But look what happens next week, guys. This is going to be a well-advertised. We're going to talk a lot about this. Next week, the 6 to 10 day outlook, which includes pretty much from about Monday through Thursday, we are going to see record-breaking temperatures in the middle of the country. I just saw one of my friends in Des Moines, Iowa, posting they're calling for 72 degrees on Wednesday next week. The hottest temperature they've ever had in December is 68. Wow. So this could be some off-the-chart type stuff.
That is a big chunk of the country that's going to be well above average.
Yeah,
all right.
Look at that map.
Thank you, Bill.
Welcome back. Scott Peterson will now spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. He had originally been sentenced to death for the murder of his pregnant wife and unborn baby.
Peterson's attorney, Pat Harris, spoke about the case this morning on Today. Here's a little bit of what he said in response to Peterson not being able to address the court.
Well, essentially what Scott wanted to do was to make it clear that how he's been presented in the media and in court isn't who Scott Peterson is. I think what he wanted to do is make people understand that when you have things like a billboard outside the courtroom with his picture saying man or monster, that he is not a monster, that he did not commit this crime. And I think he wants people to know that.
NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has more on the emotional day in court yesterday.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. I was in court for yesterday's hearing. It was heartbreaking to see Lacey's family. They addressed Scott Peterson directly. Their tone was measured yet full of fury. Lacey and Connor will have been gone 19 years this Christmas Eve. Lacey Peterson's family speaking out in anger and anguish. In court Wednesday, Lacey's convicted killer, Scott Peterson, was just feet away, shackled, dressed in a red jumpsuit, wearing a mask, and staring directly at Lacey's mother, Sharon Rocha, as she lashed out at him. Lacey's dead, Scott, because she loved you. She trusted you and she believed in you. And you betrayed her and your son and everybody else. Peterson was in court for his official resentencing. His 2005 death sentence reduced to life without parole after the California Supreme Court found significant errors in jury selection at his trial. Peterson was found guilty of murdering Lacey, then 8 months pregnant, and their unborn baby Connor on Christmas Eve 2002. Since his 2004 trial, Peterson has remained silent. On Wednesday, the judge denied his request to speak, his lawyer saying he wanted the opportunity to challenge the public's perception of him.
One of the things that really upsets him is this concept that he did not want to have a child. And he wanted to talk a little bit about that and the fact that he would never, ever harm Lacey and Connor.
In the hearing, Lacey's mother recounting in chilling detail the last time she saw her daughter. She and I were sitting on the sofa, and I was resting my hand on her stomach, waiting for the baby to move. And she looked at me and she said, "Scott doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to feel the baby move. All the while we were there that evening, you were already planning her murder." Supporting Peterson at the hearing, his family, including his sister-in-law, Janie.
There is no forensic evidence. There is no timeline to this crime. Scott Peterson is innocent.
Peterson's defense team pushing for a retrial, citing evidence of alleged juror misconduct. With that pending, Sharon Rocha directed her closing words to the man convicted of killing her daughter. No matter what happens, there are two things that will never change. Lacey and Connor will always be dead, and you will always be their murderer. This isn't the end for Scott Peterson's case. His next hearing is scheduled for February 25th, where his defense team plans to present evidence of alleged juror misconduct. Back to you.
All right, Aaron McLaughlin, thank you so much.
A new documentary is out on HBO centered on the controversial death of a Baltimore detective. Sean Suiter was killed in the line of duty back in 2017. His killer never found.
Yeah, Suiter's death sparked a massive manhunt by the Baltimore Police Department to find his killer. But the case took a surprising twist when the public found out that Suiter was supposed to testify about alleged corruption among his fellow officers the day after he was killed. That triggered a wave of questions and scrutiny toward the police department itself. Sonia Sohn, the director of The Slow Hustle, and Jeremy Elridge, the Suiter family attorney, join us now. Good morning to the both of you. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Sonia, I want to start with you. First, just walk us through the main focus of this documentary and why it was that you wanted to tell people about Sean Suiter's story.
Well, the focus really, we follow a few investigative reporters as they try to unravel the mystery behind Sean Suiter's death. And also we follow the family, particularly the widow, as she is patiently initially waiting for justice for her husband's death, which never comes.
Jeremy, when it comes to the investigation into Sean's death, how possible is it in your mind and the eyes of Sean's family that foul play was at hand here?
Well, I think it's incredibly possible, and we've actually been able to provide the Baltimore City Police Department with what I believe are some very fruitful leads. However, with some of the turnover between commissioners, some of the obvious corruption in the department, it's been really justice delayed for this family. They are still investigating the case, and we're really hopeful that some of these leads and some of this evidence that they have will result in the arrest of the person that killed him.
And Sonia, we know the documentary actually takes a broader look at the Baltimore Police Department really as a whole. There's a long history there of corruption. What were you able to learn about the police department while making this film?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There is a long history of corruption within the Baltimore Police Department, and that history speaks for itself. The Gun Trace Task Force case, which it had already unfolded by the time Sean had passed away, it was so egregious that the city, and I'm going to sort of go back to sort of why I decided to move forward with this documentary. You know, the city, the folks in the city were so suspicious of the police department that they suspected that someone in the department had something to do with Suda's death. And then we had this, you know, on the other end, this dichotomy of the wife and the family being, what I would call a good police family, they were trusting of the department and they were patient with the process. And, you know, in the end, I felt that there was such a space between, a gulf, like between, you know, what would happen, what's going to happen in the unfolding of this case, this mystery, which I felt quite possibly wouldn't be solved, and what were the ramifications of that on the family and within the city. And sort of, you know, that's the story I was interested in covering there.
And Jeremy, we're tight on time here, but quickly, for the Souter family at this point, what does justice look like?
What justice, I hope, will look like is that we have a young, energetic mayor in Brandon Scott, and I'm hoping that this amazing documentary really causes the city to move forward, to realize the importance of getting justice for this family. And hopefully this mayor forces the police department to actually find Sean's killer and to preserve Sean's legacy.
It is a big platform on HBO. All right, Sonia and Jeremy, we appreciate you joining us this morning. Thanks so much and good luck.
Let's now take a look at what is making news around the world this morning.
NBC's Claudio Lavanga is back with us from Rome. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Savannah. Well, 7 United Nations peacekeepers were killed and 3 others were seriously injured by a roadside bomb explosion in central Mali. Now, the IED exploded as the UN convoy was driving in an area where groups known to be affiliated with ISIS usually operate, even though no group has claimed responsibility for the blast yet. And according to a survey on press freedom that is published every year at this time, this year a record number of journalists were put behind bars for the job they do. 293 reporters were imprisoned this year. That's 15 more than last year, and 24 more were killed because of what they write or what they say. Now, according to the to the U.S. non-profit organization that keeps track to a number of journalists who are imprisoned or killed every year, this is another testament or a sign that there is a growing intolerance of independent journalism. Last but not least, an Israeli company has produced the largest steak built in a lab in the world. Now, this steak is it weighs 4 ounces and was built or produced, I don't know how to say that. It was produced by putting cow cells into some sort of 3D printer. Now, I'm sure it's more complicated than that. But anyway, the companies that produce cell-cultured meat in laboratories say that, of course, it's better for the environment and it's better, of course, for the animals because they don't have to be slaughtered to produce the meat. Well, now, after vegetarians and vegans, the next generation, guys, may become laboratarians. That means that are people that only eat meat produced in a laboratory. You heard it here first. Remember that.
Hey, I'm blown away that anything to do with a steak and a 3D printer. What?
I'm not sure.
Wow.
I have no idea. We might need to do more on this. All right.
Yeah, Claudia, look into that one.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Pantone has unveiled its annual color of the year for 2022. And for the first time since the company started the tradition 22 years ago, it's created a brand new color. And here it is. It is called Very Perry. Look at that. Or Pantone 173938. The company says the new color, quote, encourages personal inventiveness and creativity and reflects a desire to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. A statement said it brings a new perspective to qualities of the blue family, as you can see there, while also highlighting violet-red undertones. It's pretty.
It's very blue. Is that the accurate color?
Right. Yeah, I know. And blue doesn't exactly equate to me to like, let's overcome it.
I don't know. But maybe we're not getting the full picture there, but
yeah.
Blue hair is in.
It also, it's, does it look like something
I
you've
have
never
questions
seen
about
before?
this. I have questions about the 3D printer steak. I have a lot of questions. Right
Exactly. It's very pretty. I don't know.
Okay. Maybe you can try it out if you
There we
like.
go.
All right. Thank you.
Look at outfits in this color.
Exactly. All right. Nearly a year after surviving a car crash that nearly took his life, Tiger Woods announced he's coming back and will take part in a tournament next week. He won't be alone. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has details.
Savannah and Joe, good morning. Good news for golf fans. Tiger Woods is back, announcing he'll be in a tournament in the coming days. This after some thought he may never play the game again.
Tiger Woods is teeing up for his latest comeback.
You called it there.
The golfing great announcing on Twitter his return to the sport he's dominated for decades. Although it's been a long and challenging year, I am very excited to close it out by competing in the PNC Championship with my son Charlie. I'm playing as a dad and couldn't be more excited and proud. Woods and 12-year-old Charlie will return to the course together next week, a repeat of their appearance in the family tournament last year. Some are calling the Team Woods rematch miraculous. In late February, Woods was involved in a single car crash that threatened to end his golf career.
I'm very, very grateful that someone upstairs was taking care of me, that I'm able to not only be here, but also to walk without a prosthesis.
Father to Charlie and 14-year-old daughter Sam, Woods has cited his children as motivation in his long road to recovery.
It's been tough at times, yes. Some dark moments, but then again, as I was making progress through it too, I could see some light. I'm able to participate more with my kids and their activities and more and just in life in general.
Some of the first images after the accident showed Woods cheering on his son as he competed in tournaments of his own. But in recent weeks, Woods has made it clear he's not ready to be a permanent spectator. Days ago, the legend practicing in his signature Sunday red at the Hero World Challenge. And this 3-second clip of his famous swing captioned, "Making progress."
Playing hit and giggle golf, it's easy, but playing tour golf and being prepared to play and try and shoot scores against these best players on the toughest golf courses, that's a totally different deal. And I am a long way away from that.
At almost 46 years old, Woods has long been considered one of the greatest golfers of all time. Now, all eyes will be watching as he attempts his latest comeback.
In Tiger Woods' own words, he still has a long way to go, saying he's only at about the halfway point of his recovery, but in the coming days, we'll see exactly how far he has come. Savannah and Joe, back to you guys.
I think a lot of folks will be watching that one. All right, thank you, Miguel. It is by far the smallest cabinet-level agency, yet during the pandemic, the Small Business Administration was given a big role, handing out more than $1 trillion in emergency funds. Billions were dispersed through something called the Shuttered Venue Grant Program, which helps theaters, music clubs, and other entertainment spots hit hard by the pandemic. I sat down inside a Broadway theater with the SBA Administrator, Isabella Casillas-Guzman, to talk about the program's successes and its challenges. In your mind, was this program a success, and what did the money accomplish?
Yes, I mean, this was a complicated grant program that we were charged with administering on behalf of the federal government, and I think it's been a great success. And in hearing directly from these operators, they were saved by these funds.
You mentioned it was complicated. It wasn't perfect, was it?
It was not perfect, and when I walked in, it was not where I wanted it to be, and I asked my team to be as entrepreneurial as the small businesses we serve, and that means be agile, adapt, and try to figure out how we could improve processes along the way.
Early on, there were tech glitches that made it hard to apply. Then as the process got going, some business owners say it took too long to get the money. To those who were frustrated by the process, what's your message to them?
My message is that I agree. We need to always focus on making something as important as this more customer friendly, easier to access, of course, balanced with the controls that are needed to make sure the funds get into the hands of the businesses or institutions it's intended to serve. So we really appreciate the situation that they were in. They were hard hit, first to close, probably last to reopen, and so we were just working around the clock to try to make this available.
During the pandemic, the responsibility that was put upon the Small Business Administration is it fair to say, was significantly larger than before the pandemic?
Significantly is probably even an understatement. I mean, we're a small agency that put out about $40 billion a year in loans and investments, and this went to $1.2 trillion of relief nearly. And so that's been astronomical.
Moving forward, we're still in the pandemic. Businesses are reopening, but there are still a lot of struggles. What do you see your biggest role being, especially for these venues that were part of the Shuttered Venues program? What are the biggest challenges they face, and how can you help them?
I think there's continued uncertainty, and clearly, while they've been able to reopen, obviously we need to make sure that first off, that consumers are shopping small and entertaining with small venues and dining small, and especially during this holiday season, it's such an important time for them.
That Shuttered Venue program has awarded more than $13 billion so far. The applications process is now closed, but the SBA still has about $2.5 billion to dole out to venues that have already applied for help.
Great interview. Now it's time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
Silvana Henao is back with us. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, so we're getting the latest read on the labor market this morning. Just out, 184,000 Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. That's the lowest level in more than 52 years. All of Google's employees globally, including the company's extended workforce and interns, will get a one-time cash bonus of $1,600 this year. A company spokesperson told Reuters that bonus is in addition to Google's work-from-home allowance and its $500 well-being bonus. Meanwhile, the tech giant just last week delayed its return to office plans indefinitely. Google earlier expected employees to return to the office starting January 10th, but now will wait until the new year to make decisions on bringing employees back. Apple will not have to make changes to its in-app payment system for now. Those changes would have allowed developers to add links for users to choose alternate payment methods for in-app purchases outside the App Store. In a court battle earlier this year with Epic Games, the judge ordered Apple to stop preventing developers from linking to these payment options. Apple originally had until today to make those changes, but an appeals court in San Francisco granted the company more time while both Apple and Epic appeal the original ruling. The state temporarily protects Apple's control over its App Store and the fees it generates, which can range up to 30% of digital transactions. This until the appeal is decided. Guys, back to you.
As we continue our year in review, we're taking a look back at the best images and visuals that captured the biggest events and most important messages over 2021.
Yeah, National Geographic is out with its Year in Pictures campaign today. From the global vaccination push to the continued impact climate change is having on our world, 2021 had its fair share of memorable visual moments. And we're lucky to have Whitney Johnson, National Geographic's Director of Visual and Immersive Experiences, with us this morning. Whitney, good morning. So National Geographic is, of course, known for its stunning photography, really the way moments are captured and preserved. And today we get your guys' look at a year in pictures. So tell us about what went into this project and deciding on which moments really encapsulate a year.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, National Geographic is, of course, synonymous with photography, and I think our Year in Pictures campaign is really no exception. We try to bring our audience just a selection of really powerful single images, but we really try to do more than that. We try to tell a story and try to help our audience make sense of, well, another pretty crazy year.
Yeah.
So crazy is an understatement. Yeah. We're getting used to saying that. So when it comes to putting this issue together, is this a year-round process? And then how do you ultimately decide which pictures will make their way onto the 4 different covers?
Well, it is a year-round process in the sense that we have a great team of photo editors here who are working with photographers all year round on the stories that go into our issues throughout the year. Our photographers made almost 2 million photographs this year. I think it was 1,944,644 to be exact, and we narrowed it down to fewer than 50 for this particular issue. So it's really a group effort over the course of the year.
So, Whitney, we're seeing some of these images up on our screens here, but can you tell us about any of these kind of big themes? I mentioned, obviously, COVID's impact with vaccination efforts, climate change. Tell us about what are the big moments that really mean 2021 to you all.
Yeah, like I said, we really try to help our audience make sense of the year. So we looked at our content through what we think are the biggest stories of the year. You've talked about some of them. COVID, of course, climate change, conflict is another one. And for us, conservation is a really important story here at National Geographic. So that also rose to the top. We certainly have some favorite pictures in here. You saw the image of an elephant drinking out of a bottle. That is a good news COVID story in the sense that these baby elephants used to be fed with human infant formula, but because of the pandemic, the folks at the sanctuary were unable to get that milk, and they had to turn to the local economy instead. So the elephants are now being fed goat milk, and it's also really kind of boosting the local economy there too.
Oh,
so great to hear the stories behind those powerful images as well.
And you're so right. That one, I mean, it's just amazing just to be up close and personal like that with an animal like an elephant. But what a great story behind it as well.
Whitney, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Whitney.
Thanks for having me.
Now, during the pandemic, many people switched careers, and we wanted to end the hour by hearing from a woman who walked away from her job to return to her love of the cello.
That's right. And the performer calls herself the Baroque Barbie, dressing like Marie Antoinette and playing classical music in New York City's subways. Take a look.
Say a lot of the time it's just shock and surprise. My costume is a little bit inspired by Marie Antoinette. I did go to music school. Cello was really my passion, but after that, you know, student loans and everything takes over, and you end up in the workforce. I worked in the restaurant industry for 10 years. But during the pandemic, as a lot of people did, I decided it was time to reinvent myself. My goal is to play at as many subway stops as possible. One of the most beautiful things is that when you're listening to music, it brings everyone together.
And she says she wants to play every subway station in New York, which means she'll have to play, get this, about 424 different places. That's a lot of concerts.
A lot of chances for us to maybe run into her
exactly.
on the subway.
But now when I see her, I will know.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what's going on here.
Exactly.
So.
Hey, Baroque Barbie. That's what I'm going to say.
Can't miss her.
Yeah.
All right. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.